next thing we're going to talk about is wrinkles. So applying wrinkles with displacement. This is if you have a model like this already complete and you need to add those wrinkles where two stitches meet, similar to this image right here. So like where it starts to like pucker in those areas, that's what we're going to achieve today. As I mentioned before, if we have a turbo smooth, we're going to want to create our spline from the low poly version so that we don't have to create an edit poly. I have one right here for this edge. So I'm going to create a shape. For this one I'll do smooth because I have the turbo smooth applied. And we are going to name this so I can find it easily. I'm going to switch to shapes and select it. I'm going to name this wrinkle control. We're going to create a V-Ray displacement modifier. I have my generic material, nothing special. And I'm going to create a V-Ray edge text. Oh no, distance text. Sorry. All right, so with our distance texture, what this does is it's similar to ambient occlusion. The reason why we can't use V-Ray dirt is because it's calculated before displacement. So if we try to apply a V-Ray dirt to a displacement channel, it won't work. So we want to take this, and this is the object that it's going to be applied to is our seat here, our bench. But the object that we want to affect it is the spline. What it's going to do is it's going to see how far away the spline is from the object, and then it will create darker areas where they almost meet, just like V-Ray dirt. I'm going to go into my shape real quick and isolate so I can easily select it. I'm going to add it to this objects list. So we have wrinkle control. I'm going to bring everything back in my scene. I've already dragged this into my displacement channel right here. For the near color, we want black, and we can render and see what this looks like. To test this out, I'm going to actually drag this into my diffuse map, turn off displacement temporarily. make sure that this is applied to it. Okay, so this value, this distance value, is in inches. So we're going to play around with that. I'm going to set it to 1 for right now. And let's make this a crazy color. I actually need to swap these. And let me adjust this. Shapes. Near. Yep. Oh, you know what? I think I need to apply. Need to make this renderable. So I need to actually apply this and make it renderable in the viewport. And now we start to see something. So if we actually had like a stitching or something like that, you would need to use that object to get the red to show through, in this case red. But we're going to use wrinkles to actually have it show wrinkles between stitching. Did I lose you? Okay. I'll just go from here. Let's see. So I'm going to create stitching using a sweep, just like we just did. Lower the radius down. I'm going to apply a basic material to it. So here's my stitching and here's my seat. If I take the distance texture and plug it into the diffuse map, this area is going to become red where it's close to the stitching. If I lower this amount to be 1 inch, then it's only going to go about 1 inch away from that stitching spot. So if we look at it from this angle, we can see it stops where the spline stops. Bring this back around real quick. So now you can think of this like a mask. If I make this near color white instead of red, it looks very similar to dirt. So if I plug a material or a texture that's wrinkles, or I use some sort of noise that's stretched out, we will get these vertical lines that will cut through it. Now there are some textures that we could use. I'm going to try out Burcon noise for right now. I'm just going to take the scale, bring it down a little bit. I'm going to plug this right into the near texture so we can start to see what it's going to look like. Let's try 0.5. And we can apply any real any fractal type here because we're going to be stretching it out anyways. If we stretch this out completely, we'll start to get an effect here. I'm going to set it to explicit 2D channel map for right now. Lower my size. We'll see that we'll start to get some nice lines here. Now I want it to fade off a little bit more, so I'm going to raise this value here. I'm going to stop rendering right now, and I'm actually going to plug this right into my displacement for my seat. So without it on, this is what it looks like, just a standard material in there. If I select my seat and turn on displacement, let's try this value, start it up. So you can plug a texture in instead of using noise. You can also mix some together. So if I stop this and I take this map, so a simple way of doing this is to create a mix. We're going to take our primary folds here and plug that into anything that's white, which is color 2. And if I plug this other Burcon in here into the mix amount, it's going to block off some of the areas. I'm going to adjust the values here a little bit. I'm going to try like a 0.1 is fine. We'll start with that. And I'm going to want to plug this into my displacement. Now, instead of just rendering displacement over and over again and testing, I want to do a check. So I'm going to turn off displacement, plug this into my diffuse, and it will make it easier to see how it's going to look on the model. So we can play around with the different fractal types for this to try and break it up a little bit. Now we can stop our render. Turn this back on. I actually plugged the mix straight in by accident. I meant to plug in the distance texture, not this, but here into displacement. Approved. So now we have a little bit of a breakup between these different areas. One thing I actually haven't tried personally in the past, I believe someone on my team was talking about it. I'm not guaranteeing this works. This will work, I can't remember. But you can drag this color, this guy, into the distance as well. And this should give us variation in how long these will be. I'm going to actually lower this down a little bit and we'll see if this works. So now we can see it's stronger in some areas than others. I'm going to adjust this value here. And it works just like V-Ray Dirt Radius, where the value still controls how big the dirt is, but the map will break up what it looks like. Rather than it being a perfect gradient, it will actually vary. So now we can see it kind of curls around in the different areas based off of this map. We can always play with the strength and the shift amount. Approved by QA? Yes. As I mentioned, we can also use some sort of wrinkle map, play around with different ones, see what they do, see what they look like. Burcon is just an easy way to do it with no texture.